All right. Carlos Cardona, running for New Hampshire House, represent Belknap County. Head on to the next slide, Yenny. This is Carlos, endorsed by Humanity Forward. That's Andrew Yang. And so Carlos is from Puerto Rico, born in Puerto Rico. I had an interesting story coming to New Hampshire. He represents the LGBTQ plus community in, as you know, fighting in politics for that community and for really everyone in New Hampshire District 3. I love this one that he's set up, and with this graphic with the neon lights at the bottom, Carlos Cardona for newhampshire.com, that Laconia deserves a leader who will fight for all of us, not just few, an advocate for healthcare, affordable housing, education, racial justice, environment, to increase the minimum wage, and legalization of cannabis, which we still don't have in New Hampshire, even though we're surrounded by states that have it. So going on to next slide, and Carlos, you are here. Would you like to go tell us about yourself here, and then we'll switch to we'll switch from the slide to the screen for the AMA.
Sounds good. Well,
right.
I want to thank everybody for having me on your great coalition that you're building. I was the youngest elected official in 2007. I won by 46 votes as a write-in candidate when everybody had told me, just like Andrew Yang, that you're too young or you're new to politics. Nobody has heard of you. And I became the first gay Latino to be elected in the state of New Hampshire. Andrew, by just coincidence of life, became a personal friend of mine. He came to New Hampshire in search of a friend that could guide him throughout the state. And I was proudly the first person to take him on and say, you sound like my type of guy, let's go and campaign together. And I walked him throughout the state. I coordinated 7 events for him where I personally connected him with grassroots efforts that were happening in the state. My key is that I believe people should be heard, no matter where they come from. And I thought that Andrew Yang had a unique perspective. As a matter of fact, I'll be very honest, I wasn't really pro-UBI when I first met him. I just liked his story. And,
that's fine.
And as a minority, I was like...
That's not the problem.
As a minority, I thought, well, we both have to fight together. We're brothers in this world that we live in. So we had a lot of things that we believed in. And then I went on vacation for about 2 weeks, and he gave me his book. And his book became part of my vacation. Everywhere I went, people were like, oh, that's an interesting book. And I would tell them about Andrew Yang. And I found myself basically advocating for Andrew Yang. And so I said, if I am going to advocate for somebody with UBI, I need to find out what this is all about. So Andrew and I, over the next 9 months in presidential politics, we got pretty close here that he basically helped me understand where I was in life about what UBI does for people. And as a person that comes from a shanty village in Puerto Rico, I could understand where the UBI would help so many people. And ironically enough, I became unemployed over the spring. I thought I was going to lose everything, and UBI saved my life. I have a 5-month-old baby. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I have a partner, a mother with cancer, and a mother-in-law with dementia that I take care of. And my income was helping us all get through. And so when I lost my job, I had nowhere to go. So I had to pay taxes, mortgage, car, everything that comes with it, including diapers. Now you add diapers and formula to the equation. And so, but way before that, I became supportive of UBI during the presidential election, as I understood very deeply how UBI would change the injustices happening in our country. And so I learned how successful it is in other countries. And as a young person, I realized, wow, this could eliminate some of the burdens that we have as young people so that we can continue to advance our lives to be more productive members of society. So, and I'm all about following your dreams. I came here from Puerto Rico with nothing. It would have been nice to have $1,000 UBI, or $2,000 would be even better, just to kind of get my life started so that I could actually have a fairer way forward. But life teaches you lessons and puts you where you're at. And I encourage everybody here, I'm not going to bore you with my life, but I do want you to, at some point, go find me on Twitter, which is where I'm always at. That's where my activism takes place nowadays. There's no hidden skeletons. Everything good and bad about it is on the Washington Post article that they made about me. And I have to say that if it wasn't for Andrew Yang, I wouldn't be running for office today. There are two people that had an incredible impact in my life, and that's Andrew Yang and Senator Bernie Sanders. Without those two individuals in my life that propped me, they gave me a platform here in the state, they gave me a chance so that I can continue to lift up the voice most vulnerable in our office again. Figure out many ways to shut me down and quiet me down. And then, of course, these incredible human beings that believe in people came out of the nowhere to lift my story, to give me power so that I can fight back. And it's something that I'm not going to take for granted. Just to give you an update, since Andrew Yang endorsed me, which he is an influential human being in my county, pro Yang. Actually, as a matter of fact, there's still Yang Gang signs on my street. So some facts, we have fundraised any state representative candidate in the state of New Hampshire. Normally a race is about $1,000. We fundraised $15,000 a year to date. My goal was $10,000. Voters, we already have, so in this election, 2,000 voters will decide the fate of this county. I lost by 100 votes in 2018. I won by 46 in 2007. We really think this is what's putting us over the edge. We already have 300 more absentee ballots than any other candidate in this election. The official election day is September 8th. So if you're on social media and you use the hashtag NHPolitics to promote my candidacy, everybody in New Hampshire will see it that looks for that hashtag, and it's very useful. What else? We've passed out about 3,500 postcards, all volunteer made and paid for and sent out and written out by. So Andrew Yang has had a huge influence in my life and the way we're conducting this race, which is super important. And we're changing lives. I had a Andrew Yang supporter that reached out to me 2 weeks ago when he found out that I was endorsed by Andrew Yang, and he was in a really tough situation. And I used my influence to help them. This person was homeless, and we were able to find him a place to live temporarily until he can get back on track. He has a drug addiction, so we were able to find him help, all completely free. There's some organizations that I'm connected to that are able to sponsor him. So this goes beyond my candidacy. This goes beyond anything you think possible is happening. So I truly believe that your coalition is super important. Everything you're doing in every state. I know that a lot of you guys have a lot of hopes that Andrew Yang will run in 2024. I can tell you, you guys are doing everything exactly what you need to be doing to make sure that happens. And I'll be here to obviously support Andrew Yang in any way that I can. He's been an incredible friend to me and to many of us here in Laconia. Donald Trump had won this district by 14 points in 2018. Right now, the polls have him winning by 4 points, which is a dramatic shift. And I do think the reason that's happening is because people like Andrew Yang and some other candidates have been focusing on my race and things that are happening here. So we're going to continue to do the work. So if you're anywhere in the country where you think it's impossible to win, we can't do this, or maybe it's tough in my area, so I'm focusing in other states. If we all get together, God, we can change this country inside out, and we can have exactly what we want. But we need to stick together. And sometimes that means overlapping with other coalitions. And that's exactly what I'm doing. So, with the Bernie Sanders crew, with the Yang Gang, I even have some Pete people on my side, which I thought was interesting, but I'll take it. We have some Amy Klobuchar supporters. We have a little bit of everything. And we even have some Republicans that are just tired of same old business as usual. And if there's a message that I'm going to drive to you guys, is stability does go a long way. People are tired of business as usual. I've been a victim of bullying by my candidates for being gay and for being Hispanic way too many times. And the newspaper caught, thanks to all the attention that supporters have been bringing up to this. And they printed out a whole front page article making me look really good because I've kept my civility. And that's one of the pledges that Andrew Yang has been making candidates pledge for, that we need to discuss the issues, debate them, but stay civil and stay true to our values. And that's super important. And to me, that's how we're gonna make friends. You don't make friends with vinegar, you make it with honey. So that's how I'm gonna go forward, while at the same time lifting our brothers and sisters that are in vulnerable situations, such as our Black Lives Matter brothers, our LGBT our trans brothers and sisters. And as a white Latino, I know I have a lot of privilege too. So I will continue to use my campaign in any way, shape, or form to continue to change the conversation in one of the whitest states in the country. And we're being very effective with that. You know, people are fearful of what we're doing, and that's a good sign. That means the change is coming. So if there's anything I can do for any of you guys, I don't want you to see me as a politician. I call myself a wrinkly t-shirt politician. That's exactly what I want to be. I don't want to be a well-polished one that has designer clothes or anything like that. I just want to help people out the best I can. I've been homeless. I came here to the state as a homeless teen. I've experienced a lot of things. I've seen domestic violence, and I want to change all of that. I know that my experiences can bring a new perspective to politics. I've done it in the past, and I know we can do it again, and we're so close. I have a primary September 8th. I have 8 total candidates running against me on primary day so far, no incumbents, and I'm the one leading the conversation on every news article and social media. And that's, of course, thanks to all of you guys supporting me. And once we get through primary, I'll be down to 4 opponents, and we'll figure it out then. But I'm really excited about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlos. Yeah.
Catherine has a hand up.
Carlos, can you tell us about your district and the things that you see as a priority that you'd like to do if elected?
Of course. So Laconia is called the city on the lakes, and that's because we're actually a peninsula connected by a bridge to other parts of the state. And if you drive here, you actually have to cross one bridge or another unless you're coming from the north. We're connected by 3 lakes. Climate change is by far the most impacting issue here in our area. The other one is homelessness. We have one of the highest drug addiction and overdose rates with homeless people in our city. And that's because the Republicans that have been in charge of politics as usual here for the past 10 years have not addressed the issue. I've personally lost 1 relative to drug overdose and 3 good friends. It's something that they don't want to fund. They don't want to build any shelters. We have 1 shelter for 207,000 people, which if you're thinking like me, you think that's crazy. And a shelter that only fits 20 families, by the way. So these are very huge issues that we need to address right away. These are life or death situations. And then the other one, I was in AmeriCorps, which I failed to mention. I was in AmeriCorps for 3 years here in this district. We have one of the most underfunded school districts in the state. We are losing $2.7 million per year. I've seen it firsthand, what it looks like as an AmeriCorps working in the school district and running an after school program where we basically could hardly pay people to work. We need to change that. So one of the ways that I'm going to address that is by changing how we tax here in the state of New Hampshire. Some people don't like to talk about this, but it's a necessary thing to talk about. We rely too much on property taxes. We have one of the highest in the country. So it is important that if we're going to keep families here, we lower property tax rate and we actually is sales. It's a tough conversation we have to have, but I think it's a necessary one. A sales tax would actually even out, instead of putting the burden all on property taxes, it would make us all responsible for our school districts. And the other thing is, as a state representative, we have the ability to, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically go after the federal government and ask them for funding, which is something our state representatives haven't done over the past 10 years. It's why we're losing $2.7 million every year. So one of the biggest thing, and by the way, I am endorsed by the local teachers union and also the state union. One of the things that I'm going to do is advocate for teachers in that perspective. So I'm going to go to our delegation in DC, which happens to be all Democrat, and I'm going to go to them, and with my leverage that I will have as a state representative, to ask them for funding to specifically better fund our schools here. I'm also an anti-voucher bill, just because I believe that it takes away from our school district's money. So that is also a big issue here. We have 3 private schools, all religiously funded, and literally religiously funded. So I'm going to be that advocate that Laconia needs. Our state representatives in the past have voted for voucher bills, which of course puts our public schools in danger of not being funded. So those are big issues here: taxes, drug overdoses. We had the highest per capita in the country. We had 472 deaths in 1 year. I led a vigil here in our city to not only recall the names of those that have died while homeless and drug overdoses, but I've also led the charge on opening some temporary housing for people that are homeless, and of course, having drug abuse issues, which oftentimes shelters kick out of their shelters for certain reasons. So I believe that we need to take care of our humanity first, and then worried about the greed. So unfortunately, greed has been driving our government here in New Hampshire. And so I've been leading the charge as an activist anywhere way I can. I'm a New Hampshire Sierra Club endorsed candidate. I've led the charge in protests. I've been leading the charge in closing a coal plant. I'm a proponent of making New Hampshire all green by 2030 at the latest. I know we can do it. We have a beautiful state that we can make all that happen. So again, it's just about having the right advocates. Just like Andrew Yang is a phenomenal advocate for UBI and so many other countless issues. He's been a huge advocate of stopping domestic violence and funding programs for domestic violence victims. We just don't have the advocates here. We don't have politicians that are willing to advocate for us. We have politicians that have been too busy. You know, I've looked at my opponents. They've been funded by fracking, $10,000, $5,000, you know, collectively. So when they're the ones dictating their fundraising, that tells you what kind of politicians they're going to be. I want to end that. Make no mistake, if your community doesn't frack for gas, don't dare for a second think that it does not affect us. It does. There's a community in Pennsylvania, I forget the name of the town, but if you Google it, there's a whole video. People go there all the time to record this dead town that completely had to evacuate because of what fracking did to it. So we cannot be those oligarchs that we criticize, you know, and that's what we do when we're using natural gas and when we're depending on that. So we need to stop. We need to do it now. I have 2 kids. I don't know how many of you guys have kids. I want to leave this planet better than they inherited it. And I'm only 31. So there's no reason why we all can't do this. So hopefully that answered your question. I don't want to bore you.
Not at all. Thank you.
All right, Gray, you're up next.
Sure. Catherine took a lot out of the question I had, but my other question is, you know, you talk about New Hampshire being a very white state that got talked about in a lot of the presidential primary. And then I know that New Hampshire is fairly conservative. You know, I'm in Massachusetts. And I feel like sometimes people who are more conservative live in New Hampshire because, you know, you really only pay property taxes, and then you come down to Massachusetts for all like the social good and infrastructure that we've invested in. How do you plan to get some of the other state representatives, some of the other state senators on board with kind of the history that New Hampshire has and some of the things you're talking about with them being bankrolled by fracking and some of the energy companies that are going to fight against some of the things you're trying to do? With the homelessness issue, I don't know where you fix some of that. That's probably coming from, you know, the state not wanting to be taxed, but there's energy issues and things like that as well. So how do you plan on, like, you know, you by yourself as one rep can't do this, bringing them in to make positive changes for your state?
I love that question. A man or a woman prepared to fight doesn't come alone. I'm Puerto Rican. We don't go alone anywhere. My whole entire life, I've learned to fight as a pack. And I don't mean literally a pack of corporate money or anything like that. I mean like a pack of wolves. So we have a coalition of about, so the state house has about 400 members. It's the largest and oldest in the state. I have some leverage as chairman of the Laconia Democrats, because that means that some of these Democrats will need my votes for whatever nominees they want. So I will use that leverage for their nominees. And when I say nominees to party positions and stuff that people just go after. So they're going to need my vote in my coalition, which we have about 900 members and all of us vote. And we have pledged to stand behind me, which what that means is it will give me power to be able to have a say over the state representatives, what kind of legislation they will take on. I will be, and I'm not trying to brag, but I'll probably be the most powerful state representative freshman going into the state house, just because of the coalition I've built before getting into the state house. I knew going into this that you can't go alone or you're gonna get eaten alive. That's literally New Hampshire politics for you. So I've built a coalition over the past 10 years to make sure that when I get there, not only I will have enough to go after these state representatives that are constantly in our way, whether they're Republican or Democrat. And let's not talk about the infighting that sometimes happen. Let's talk about also some of the Republicans that are currently supporting me, because this is affecting them. I know a couple of neighbors down the street, they're paying $15,000 a year for a 4-bedroom house in property tax. I'm approaching these issues the way Andrew Yang approached his issues. I learned a lot from him and Bernie Sanders. They attracted Republican support during the primary. They attracted independent support during the primary. Why is that? Because they approached the issues not as a Democrat issue, not as a Republican issue, but as a human issue. How does this affect us? Having a high population of homeless increases crime. It increases a million other issues. So it's all about how we approach it. I mean, Massachusetts is a perfect example. You guys have a Republican governor, whether we like it or not. And he got elected fairly. And that's because he approached the issues from a people's perspective. And that's the same perspective I'm going to approach. I am the only Democrat in this district that has been able to win in this district as a progressive. And that's because I build friendships. I build connections with people. I tell my life story. I don't hide anything. I tell them. And I act in the community. I served every Wednesday, including during the pandemic, even as I was thinking I was going to lose my house, at the local soup kitchen. I'm involved in the school district still to this day. My daughter is about to enter kindergarten for the first time, so I'm happy that not only I'm volunteering in her school before that, but now while she's a student there. This is about doing the work before you start running for office. And I have done that. I've been in politics, involved as an activist for 14 years, elected for about 6. So I've already done the work necessary to be the next candidate to win this district. I feel pretty confident about what I've done. I lived in the most conservative ward in my district, and I have more signs on properties in this district than any of my opponents combined. So what that tells me is that people are seeing through the work I'm doing, and not just me, it's a coalition. People love being part of a group. They love being part of a family, and they understand that I'm willing to put my district above anything else. When you read my Washington Post article, you will see what I've done over the past 14 years. Not many people in politics can tell you I've done that much in such little short time in my lifetime. When Democrats were preaching, we want civil unions, and Republicans were preaching, no, we need to protect the sanctity of marriage. I was the only Democrat in the state of New Hampshire leading the way for marriage equality. And I was arguing, like, New Hampshire had a law where you could be 13-year-old woman or girl and get married, but not a homosexual could not get married. So these are the things how I approach them. I approach them from a humanity level. And I also led the charge as an activist with the youngest state representative after me, from Manchester, who changed. She was a Girl Scout for a long time, and she decided to run for office. She felt empowered by my story, and she ran, and she changed the law to change the minimum age required for marriage from 13 to whatever it is for male and female now. And we still have a lot of work to do, but that's activism that I've been doing for the past so many years. I'm going to continue to do that. So that's how you change Republican minds. That's how you get Republicans and Democrats on board that don't necessarily see eye to eye. I'm the perfect storm just because I'm a mixed breed. On issues, I can see both sides, and I can work that for our advantage. Also, something I didn't mention, my partner owns a business. He has 200 employees, which I manage. I hire, I train all of them personally myself. I do some of the bookkeeping, and I treat them exactly how I would want to be treated. We pay them $15 minimum wage. We give them health insurance, vacation time, paid family leave. I already lead by example. So these are the things that I've shown my community that we can do as a business, that I know we can do as a state, and people believe in it because I've been able to accomplish it myself from a personal level. So, and when it comes to a shelter, absolutely we can do something about it. Laconia, in this past budget, our state representative voted against a budget that would have given us 2 more shelters for our district. It would have increased the population of of available shelters to basically from covering 200 people throughout the year to covering, a total of $20,000 people in one given year. Actually, as a matter of fact, there's a property down the street that I've been advocating. It's called the State School, which is a very controversial issue here in the state of New Hampshire. But I've been advocating to turn that situation into a positive one. We can build low-income housing there. We can build a farm there where we can do farm-to-table food for the community. We could actually build some boutique hotels where we can actually bring some tax revenue in. So there's a multi-purpose use facility right there alone that we could have an easy solution when the property is rotting away. So I encourage you guys all to search state school property in New Hampshire, and you'll see the history of articles on that property. So I'm the only one advocating for a solution there when everybody's just sitting on their hands and saying, I don't know where to find these solutions. So it takes a homeless person, and I hate to say this, because we should all be able to find solutions for our brothers and sisters, but it's going to take in this state a homeless person, a gay person, a Hispanic, all these vulnerable population communities to stand up and speak up about what's wrong with our state in order for anything to change. And I do think that I have those experiences. I unfortunately have lived them at a very young age. I don't wish that on anybody, but I'm going to use this as a good thing. I'm going to use my opportunity to change those. I was the youngest person appointed to a state commission. I was on the Homeless Youth Task Force, which it was created purposely because of issues that I brought up to the Governor John Lynch at the time. We had one of the highest homeless populations in the country. And I don't take Andrew Yang's endorsement for granted. He's endorsing me for a reason. Like, he has seen firsthand what I've been doing. Actually, I joke around with him. I said, if I decide to run for president in 2024, you've already endorsed me, because he told the Washington Post, he's like, this guy needs to run for president someday. So I joke around with him. I said, I'll take vice president, it's fine. But he's, that's the reality of New Hampshire, the campaign trail. Today, I took a phone call from somebody running for city council in Boston, Ashwin. He was inspired by what I'm doing here. And I told him, what you're doing in Boston affects us here. So make us proud. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not just focusing on I'm not just running for this district. I'm running for all of us. Our communities need us. And I'm oftentimes getting a phone call. Jen Perlman, which I know you guys are a big fan of. She called me and she's like, help me. I'm hitting a roadblock with the establishment. And I was like, I'm happy to get my hands dirty. We cannot continue to be afraid of the roadblocks we have. We can't continue to say, I don't know how to solve that. And it's okay to say, I don't know, but we need to proactively find those solutions. There are people in our communities that are suffering these issues that have perfect answers on how we solve them. For this situation and the homeless thing issue, I know how we solve that. So, but yeah, we have some great candidates you guys all love. Jen Perlman. I'm trying to think of some others. What's his name in New Jersey? Chacon, I think it's how you say his last name. He was pretty amazing. I advised his campaign. And also just a testament to my campaign. Russ. And then there was another one, Hector Segura, a great brother. I've advised 15 congressional races, 7 of them have won. I've advised 8 presidential campaigns. At least 4 of them have gotten delegates. So I know what it takes to take on the establishment, which is oftentimes in the way of these solutions that we need. I know how to tackle special interests. I've already out fundraised them. And I know how to tackle Republicans. I've lived in a Republican district for 14 years. So you got to use your enemy in your favor. So I've been doing that, and I've been building coalition my whole entire adult life. And it's in my blood. I grew up in a shanty village in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. If you Google Aguadilla, you'll see where I grew up, and beautiful view from my home, but the worst case scenario for a living condition. I've seen shootings. I grew up with them. That was a common scenario as a kid. Drugs, I knew what each one looked like. I've been fortunate enough in my life that I've never touched a drug. Well, I mean, I have smoked cannabis, so I guess that would be one, but, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I grew up with a very socialist family that just showed me from a very young age what greed of the 1% looks like in our country, and made me very well aware. My grandfather ran for mayor unsuccessfully. I have a cousin who just last year I convinced to run for mayor in Puerto Rico, and he did. He just won his primary, so my family is very excited. And I'm hoping that I'm going to make everybody proud and win the September 8th. So if you look up Julio Roldan, he's my cousin, and he ran for mayor in Puerto Rico, and he'll be the first Democrat mayor. Polls are showing that he's going to win that race. He just needed to win the primary, which it was very heated. And so it runs in my blood. It's something I feel passionate about. I grew up with being very aware about my world and the realities of it. And for some unfortunate reasons, you know, I witnessed my mom getting beat up by an ex. Domestic violence is something that, you know, it's very close to my heart, and I want to change. And so I know that by offering a safe home, UBI, those two things together can definitely solve a lot of problems. I'm a huge proponent of Medicare for All. I was the first state representative candidate to come in favor of Medicare for All. Now we have over 172 candidates running for office in the state of New Hampshire in favor of Medicare for All that joined a coalition with me. And some people say, well, why are you going that route? You know, it's about $400 to $300 a month for a person to pay for health insurance in the state of New Hampshire. I'll tell you what, that's a good, sometimes, unfortunately, that's a reason why people will stay in a very bad relationship, because they cannot afford their health insurance. So I want people to have their independence. I want them to be able to go for their lives and do whatever they're dreaming of, and not have to stay in a toxic relationship. So sorry, anybody else?
Yes, we
Brendan?
have 3 more questions. We are
Sorry, I can go
definitely
on
running a little
forever.
long, but no problem. I'm really loving hearing what you're having to say. If you could keep it to like 2 minutes per
Sure.
question, that would be great.
Just
and then
go
we've
like
got,
this, I'll cut it.
no worries. You're fantastic. So next up is Brendan, then we'll have Kevin and Rachel, and then we'll continue on with the slides that we've got. So
Yeah.
Brendan, go ahead.
Yeah, so Carlos, it's so great to have you in this call, and to have you in our movement. As someone who's been volunteering for candidates for almost a decade, there's just this new energy that you see in a lot of candidates, and you have tons of that. So it just makes me really excited for the future of politics. But I read in that Washington Post article that your partner voted for Trump in 2016. And, you know, right now there's a discussion in the Yang gang of like how we can be like, what's the right way to be humanity first to Trump voters? Do we like embrace them, or do we try to explain how they're wrong? Like, can you give us some advice as like a movement? Like, what is the right way to approach Trump voters and Trump supporters?
I'm with a Republican. So I should have mentioned that. How do I convince Republicans earlier? My relationship has taught me a lot. The best way that I can tell you, so the Washington Post kept asking me, how are you guys together and why? Like, you don't have anything politically, and you're so active and you're so passionate. Like, how do you see eye to eye in your relationship? We fell in love for who we are. We you know, it's like when you go on Tinder, Grindr, whatever you use, and you find somebody really cute and you're like, oh, they seem like my type. And then you get to know each other and you form that bond. we Americans are forgetting to do that with one another, with our neighbors. So when you approach issues, don't approach them from an issue perspective. Find out where that person is. And I think that's how we approach dating. You know, we find out we like that person and we're willing, because we like them, we're willing to meet them where they're at. And sometimes we're willing to overlook some of the things we don't like. So that was the case for my relationship. I didn't ask him whether he was a Republican or a Democrat. That was not relevant to my relationship. And so as we grew and I got involved in politics, I realized I was with a Republican, and I just got to know him and I educated him. I'm not perfect either. I'm not perfect on all issues. And I have to understand that when I'm approaching my views towards somebody, when I'm approaching them. So I cannot approach them with a perspective that, oh, you're wrong and I'm right and you got to do what I say. As a matter of fact, he's voting for Biden. I've been very reluctant. I'm going to vote for Biden. I'll make that disclaimer right now. But it's been very tough for me because as a guy that believes in Medicare for all, Green New Deal, UBI, I'm pretty progressive, and let's just face it, Biden and I don't meet eye to eye. But again, I think we're missing the concept of what humanity means. You know, it's like when you go to a shelter, you don't look at where people are coming from. You look at where they are at that moment, and you're willing to serve them. So if we want people to look at issues from our perspective, we need to make them like us. We need to make them admire us. We need to make them want to be our friend. When I came here, I had 0 friends. And now I'm like, everybody on Twitter is my friend. And I treat it as such. I have people that they don't think I'm gonna answer back. And I'm like, yes, I love talking to people. I love helping. And that's how we're gonna change hearts. I have neighbors that are like very wealthy, very pro-Trump, and they're going to vote for me. And I'm hoping they're gonna vote for Biden, and I'm working and I'm doing the job. And that's because I want them to see my humanity. I want them to see me as a human and why I feel as strong as I do about the issues. And when you do that, the rest is not even worth worrying about. Trump, like many politicians say, he's the symptom, not the problem. And so one fun statistic out there, or not so fun, 70% of white, uneducated, or less than an associate's degree support Donald Trump. And we need to ask ourselves, why is that? What is it that he's saying that we're not? He meets with them. He meets eye to eye with them. He's willing to have a drink with them, even though I haven't seen him having a drink. I don't think he drinks, but you know, he's willing to meet at their level. And if any celebrity in the world, I don't care who it is or how strong your convictions are, came to you and say, hey, I want to have a chat with you. I want to just meet eye to eye with you. Your feelings would change towards that artist, that celebrity. And I think that's what Donald Trump is doing. That's what he's very successful at. He's really successful at just connecting with people and talking to them eye to eye. And that's what we need to do. I have friends that have voted for Donald Trump that are voting for Biden now and are voting for me. And they're like, I can't believe you're making me do this. And they just can't say no to me because my influence over them is greater than anything Donald Trump can promise them over the next 3 months. And that's what we need to do. We need to be the influencers. So I tell you, you guys had a lot of power over me over the primary. Like, I had to keep meeting with Yang, and I couldn't say no to him even after I endorsed my candidate, because I was like, I cannot upset the Yang gang. Like, I like them. I want to be with them. I want to be cool as them. Actually, I don't even sport hats. And like, Yang got me a hat. I wore it, and I was like, I'll wear a hat because they're cool people and I want to hang out with you guys. And let's face it, I mean, who doesn't want to be cool, right? So we have to use that. We have that to our benefit. You guys are really cool people. And so don't lose your cool on the campaign trail. Use the issues to empower people. And I do it all the time. I acknowledge the fact that we've gone so hard as minorities against white people. We sometimes do that to them, what they did to us as minorities. And I acknowledge that. I acknowledge their pain too. And if we're going to heal as Americans, it has to be a two-way road. It cannot be like, you did this to me and you owe me. We're not going to do that, because at the end of the day, we're all going to inherit the bill and we did no good. You know, I'm not a proponent, and this is controversial, but I'm not a proponent of reparations. I don't think money, and I know this will be controversial, maybe with some of you guys, is the solution to all evil. I mean, we had a Black president that didn't solve all of our problems. Our problems go deeper than that. We have to build relationships. We need to focus on how, and that's speaking to me as a Puerto Rican who the United States basically stole from Spain. Reparations is not going to fix everything. It might fix some of the income inequalities happening in our country, in the Black communities, in the Black districts where I lived for 4 years in Buffalo, New York, in Orlando, some of the neighborhoods there. But it's not going to solve the problem. I know that solving the problem is building relationships, building brotherhood, sisterhood, family relationships. I have that with my neighbors. There's not one single soul in this district that can come out and they can disagree with me on issues and say he's a liberal or he's a snowflake or whatever, but they can actually say, I hate that guy. And that's exactly what you guys' mission needs to be if you're gonna change people's minds. And that's why I think Andrew Yang is right. Being civil on the campaign trail goes a long way. I used to pay attention so much of what you guys had to say. And sorry, I don't know if you were cutting me, but I was looking at the person that was speaking, sorry. And I was like, wait, I have to look. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. All right, next up, I believe, is Kevin.
Okay, I feel like you answered a lot of what I was gonna ask, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. So I have two quick questions. Hopefully they're quick. Considering your background, have you felt welcome in New Hampshire? And also, what are some key things you learned as a teen official?
Okay, so I want clarification on that last part, the teen official. What do you mean by it?
You were elected at 17, I believe. So what did you learn as a teenager that prepared you for your later life?
So the answer to your first question, yes and no. I felt welcome. The people here in New Hampshire are the loveliest people I've ever met. This is home to me. I've actually lived now just as long here in mainland as I've lived actually in Puerto Rico. So this is home to me. And I have so many relationships and bonds that are just phenomenal. I don't see myself living anywhere else. That said, if you Google the Laconia Daily Sun article that just came out about me, front page, I was quoted from a tweet that I sent out. I was ready to quit politics and leave. Most of the pressure I get is not from actual people or Republicans for that matter. It's been from people within our own party. The influence, and I don't want to be a party basher here, but there is a reality we need to face. Power will cling to power no matter what it looks like or where it is. And so we need to change that. The DNC, the NHDP, which is the New Hampshire Democratic Party, there are some people in our party that don't want our party to look like us, young, diverse, with different opinions. They like to speak up. So the unwelcomeness has come because I do have what people consider radical ideas or very left-leaning ideas. I don't call them radical or left. I just call them, they're humanity focused. They're, common sense policies based on life experience I've had. But that said, to answer your question, I have learned so much. I mean, I would do it all over again. I think part of what helped me was the fact that the party did go against me. So like, it taught me a lot of lessons really early on. So I learned, what I needed to learn. That said, as a teen, the biggest thing that I learned was keep your friends close, your enemies closer. New Hampshire politics is very, very vicious. I'm glad that I was there for Andrew Yang because it could be a very tough. And let me not just pick New Hampshire. Like, it's just as tough in California. It's just as tough in New York. Those parties are very entrenched in their ways. So when anybody that looks different or talks different, and I don't mean just with like ethnicity or anything like that, just ideas that seem too radical, they will put a hard stop on that. And they'll start behind the scenes talking oh, do you really like that person? You know, they start questioning what you believe. So, you know, I'm glad that I was there for Andrew and other candidates when they needed it to be able to vent and to be able to, like, you know, get through this process. So that's the biggest lesson I learned. And then, of course, I became the progressive that I am. When I started in politics, I was pretty moderate. I was things that I was preaching. And yeah, I saw somebody typing in Brooklyn. I have some friends in Astoria and Queens and Brooklyn. I helped out Samelis for Congress running. She was one of my favorite candidates. The party's entrenched in every corner of America. And, you know, when they first started, it was, they had the right mindset. And now there's some people in power that just don't. So we need to do everything possible to storm the castle and change it. So hopefully that answers your question about some of the things I've learned.
Thanks.
And Rachel to finish it up.
Hi, Carlos. I'm Rachel Davies. I'm in Georgia, and I'm an addiction researcher. I know that you mentioned substance misuse, drug harms, and I know that New Hampshire has been very hard hit by the opioid epidemic. So I wanted to hear you expand on what would be your priorities, your plan for addressing drug harms at the state level. I think, unfortunately, a lot of state policy has focused on prescribing, which restricting prescribing a lot of times just opens the door for the more potent heroin and heroin synthetic alternatives that are the driving force behind the overdose rates. So I wonder if you thought about investing in harm reduction on the one side, and then also in recovery support services, because addiction can be a lifetime struggle for people.
So just to tell you, like, I feel so strongly about that. I'm like ready to go when you were asking. So I actually convinced for the first time a person that has a drug misuse disorder to run for Senate. His name is Phil Spagnuolo. He thought at first I was crazy. And I was like, as chairman, I command you. And I was like, no, I'm like, I need you to. And he laughed, we joked, and that's how I am, I joke around. And so he's like, I'm gonna think about it, and he decided to run. So search him, and then you can see where I, like, more about what I'm about to say. I lost my brother-in-law about 9 years ago. He was 25, and he died in our jails from a drug overdose. There's a big wrong picture there. Nobody should be dying in our jails from drug overdose. Like, it just, that shouldn't be the case. I do believe in decriminalizing most drugs. Again, this is controversial, but I think we're approaching drugs the wrong way. We need to approach it from a mental health perspective and not from a law enforcement perspective. First of all, marijuana should be legalized. My mom was saved by it. She has had cancer for 12 years. She wouldn't be alive this long if it wasn't for it. She was losing weight. She was like in pain all the time, and marijuana has like helped her with evidence. Yes, Portugal. I look at the comments occasionally, and I saw Portugal. Yeah, Portugal has been very successful at their drug disorder solutions, I guess it's the way to go about it. So that would be my first approach. It's just decriminalizing most drugs so that we can actually approach them from a health perspective. The other thing is, when we're calling 911 in the state of New Hampshire, unfortunately, the first thing that shows up to a scene is a police officer. If you've been convicted into our criminal system, unfortunately, this police officer most likely will have a prejudice against you already if you have some sort of drug use or a past. So I think it's very important that the first person that shows up to a scene where drug is the issue, it shouldn't be a police officer showing up. It should be a mental health worker. It should be a nurse or somebody in that perspective. Manchester, New Hampshire has a program that works similar to that, and that's what I would propose statewide in funding for. And this is where a sales income tax would solve our issues. It would solve that in our public education system. The other thing is, we should not have police officers in our schools. We should have mental health care workers. And I'm bringing this up because the kids oftentimes get forgotten out of these cycles of drug misuse disorders. So I think we need to include our kids in that. I'm a foster parent. I've had 7 foster kids in my lifetime, and a lot of them were because of drug abuse issues. So my daughter, my first daughter, which I adopted, she was an NAS baby. So, which is a narcotic, I forget what the initials stand for, but it's basically what people call a drug baby. And she's healthy, she's doing great. She's above her class in grade levels. Like she's going into kindergarten already, like knowing all her ABCs in Spanish and English. So again, it's all about resources. We have to allocate the resources and the workers to the issues. We cannot use police to solve these issues. So that would be my first approach, and that alone would decrease our problems by at least 25 to 30%. The other thing is homelessness, and this is where the UBI comes into place. I'm proposing a state UBI where I know I have workers that they have told me this. I'm like, I'm about to lose my insurance. Like, it's easier to be a drug addict. And this is what they'll say to me. It's easier to be a drug addict than a working adult. And so I want to make it easier for them to be a working adult, as they would say, you know, and it is tough. I'm a parent of 2 and I work full time, 60 hours a week, well, before I was unemployed. And it was a nightmare. It was tough. There was days that I'm like, I just want to take a vacation very far away, one-way ticket. And I can only imagine if you have a drug use disorder or misuse disorder, how much tougher it is. So I want to make it easier for people to want to be a human, to want to pursue their dreams. And it's all about common humanity. It's just, we're the only species in the world that has to pay rent for a place to live, for a hole to go into and wrap yourself in a blanket. Like, and that's the way I like to think about it. And so we need to make it easier for people to be able to just live. And you know, food is another issue. Like, it's just so hard. So I want to raise the minimum wage by $15 an hour minimum. Somebody asked me today during a podcast if I was in favor of 20. Absolutely. 20 should be the minimum, and that's how I'm going into the State House, advocating for that. If it doesn't happen, I'll happily settle for 15 and then work from there. But I want to attach it to the Constitution where it will increase automatically with the with inflation in the standard of living. That's my mom in the background cooking. So to me, you know, I think these common things that we're talking about, homelessness is a huge issue. We think about that as, we think of Africa and other countries, third world countries, we say, oh, well, you know, there's dying and poor people there. We have them here. Like, we have some of the worst communities in the world, like, suffering here in our country, in our own country. So in Puerto Rico, Hurricane Maria, 3,000 Puerto Ricans died because they didn't have the resources they needed to live. So again, to answer your question directly, this is the first few things that I would tackle, and that alone would decrease some of our problems by 30 to 40%. And then I would look at some studies. I don't have the solutions to everything, but I would look at the studies to see what we can do next as a state. But I know that these things alone will be a huge leap forward. New Hampshire's so behind. I know you guys hear a lot of cool things outside of New Hampshire about like politics here, but New Hampshire is like caveman era style here. I know Massachusetts, Jenny from Massachusetts probably knows a little bit too much about us. But hopefully this gives you some insight as to where I stand on issues. But I want you guys, if anything, go check out Phil Spagnuolo for Senate in District 7 in New Hampshire. And you will see what kind of policies I would be behind as a state representative, just because this is a type of people that I'm advocating for to write laws. And he's had 2 drug overdoses. He has tattoos all over himself. He's a common guy like you and me. He suffered it all. And that's the kind of person I want writing the laws. People that have suffered day-to-day life, that knows how tough it is to be a human, not the 1% that have it easy, that are swimming right now in their pools as we speak, as we're all working really hard. So hopefully that answers your question, Rachel.
Thank you very much, Carlos. So what would be the best way for the Yang Gang to support you? Would that be doing phone banking or donations? It sounds like you're pretty decent on compared to what the usual race is, but yeah.
Colleen was so happy when I told her I was not going to ask her for money. She was like, this makes my life a lot easier. I was like, I love making life easier. Honestly, this is going to sound crazy, but the easiest thing you can do is follow me on Twitter, retweet my message, and anything you promote of mine, make sure you have the hashtag NHPolitics, plural. Everybody in the state of New Hampshire starting to tune in on Twitter and following the hashtag and finding out who's running. And so the more people see my message, I literally today, there was a boosting happening for my campaign on Twitter. We got 30,000 tweets. We were actually trending in New Hampshire and I was pretty excited. I got 27 direct messages from new voters that wanted an absentee ballot. I mean, I won by 46 votes the first time and I didn't have these 27 new votes. So imagine if we continue this pattern every single day. So honestly, Carlos for NH and New Hampshire Politics hashtag is the best way. Social media is how we're going to win the future. So encourage your friends to get on Twitter, even if it's just to open an account to promote Andrew Yang or myself. I won't be selfish, so I'll throw Andrew Yang there. Or I don't know if you guys know Steve Marchand, who's a phenomenal politician here in New Hampshire, great friend of mine. So to you guys, the future of politics is going to be won over Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's how Donald Trump won. And that's how we're going to win. So we order 1,700 signs, they're all gone. We just ordered 1,500 more. We have at least 500 reserved already. So this is social media, everything. My platform, how I became to be known, social media. You wouldn't know about me if I didn't have social media. So
Awesome.
This is how the future is going to be won. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on here tonight, Carlos.